Welcome to Screenshots. I'm joined by my co-host Juan Arraya. Juan, why don't you tell our viewers what we have for them today?
So, Gerri Viant is coming for the interview. No technical difficulties this time. It's all fixed. So, she's coming. Great interview with you. And then we're going to do a preview for the Soundshore Invitational. A lot of great teams, a lot of really good matches. We just did the draw with Parsons, and they're pretty good.
Yeah, I think the tournament's going to be rated a 3.6, so just under the maximum. So should be a lot of points available. Virtually all the top East Coast teams are playing. Oh, that may be redundant to say top East Coast teams.
Yes.
Top teams are playing.
Yes.
So it should be a great tournament. Looking forward to hearing your picks.
I'm looking forward to a great weekend, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Me too. I'd like to welcome 13-time national champion Gerri Viant to Screenshots. We're going to be talking to Gerri today a little bit about the state of paddle, her career, and a couple other things. So first off, Gerri, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
In addition to being a third-time national champion, Gerri is my partner on the APTA live streaming for the tournaments. I had a great time working with you last weekend in Chicago, Gerri.
Yes, we're looking forward to a great season, a great way to promote the game, and enjoyed working with you as well.
So let's talk a little bit about some of your memories from the national championships. 13 national championships. That's kind of an astonishing number. Even as I say it, I'm kind of amazed. So I know there must be a number of them. Do you have a favorite or two, or a story you'd like to share?
When I think back too, we had a lot of great matches. But I think the one that sticks out the most is the final one where we played in Long Island when Sue was going to announce that she was going to retire. And that was going to be our third. We'd won back-to-back, and we were going for our third. So we prepared as usual, and before the final, we always went away and were quiet and just got ourselves mentally prepared. And then we were sitting in the car waiting for the start time, and we started thinking about this was going to be our last match together, and we both burst out crying. So very emotional, and here we are sobbing, and we missed we were supposed to be out on the court. They had to come get us out of the car. But we got on the court, and we had a great match between Lauren Zink and Julie Dodd. It went down to 3 sets, 6-5 in the third, Sue serving, and again, we had kept our emotions in check, but we both started to get a little emotional. And
you guys were up 40-11 that last game?
I believe so. And Sue started to fault just a little bit, and I looked at her and she was tearing up, so I got the ball, walked back, and I said, big serve, big serve. So she 40-30 served a let cord winner. Oh. And that's how we won that national championship. And Lauren walked up to the net, great sport, shook her hand and said, nice serve.
That's a great story. And that was one of the first years that the let rule was in play.
Yes, and you could feel everybody just go quiet. I mean,
I remember the moment. I was there at Cherry Valley, 2002.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We talked about this a little bit in Chicago. Athletics is so much about containing your emotions.
Yes.
And most successful players, not the ones from Argentina, but most successful players manage to contain their emotions throughout the course of the match. And when the match ends, you see the emotions spilling out. And that's one of the things I love to see. And your story about Sue, who was such an ice-cold competitor. I mean, I remember Sue in some really tight moments. She was just really tough.
Yeah, she was very emotional, but when we were competing, we learned how to control that and to maintain that winning pace and that feeling that you need to be able to compete well and do it consistently. But then we had a little crack there, but we regrouped, but that's really what the sport is about. It's about testing yourself in those moments.
I think that's a great comment. The ability to find a place that you can compete with containing your emotions as part of it is one of the biggest differences between our sport and other sports. In tennis, you can run hot and cold, you can lose it for a little while, you can hit a couple of balls overly hard to get your frustration out. You really can't do that in our game, can you?
No, the mental part of this game, the momentum swings are huge, and it turns on a dime, and it's about recognizing those moments and then being able to execute during those moments. And you have to have an awareness, and that's, being mentally tough to win consistently back to back. You have to have that awareness and that ability to control it.
Now, before we get to the evolution of the game, I have another question for you. So obviously you weren't always the 13-time national champion, Gerri Viant.
Right.
Is there a match you remember playing when you were first coming on the scene, somebody else was the top dog, and you started to, one particular moment in time when you started to establish yourself as one of the better players or one of the best players?
Yes, I played early quite a bit with Pat Butterfield and Deanne Tucker, and they had won a lot. And I remember being just happy that I was on the court with them and going 6-3, 6-4. Close points, but I remember this one match at Pound Ridge where I realized at 4-all that it was just a mindset. And I actually held serve where maybe I would have just been happy that I was in that moment. And from then on, I believed that I could win.
Where did that belief come from? Because belief comes with success, but success comes with belief, and it's kind of an odd dynamic.
I started to see that I was so close. So what's the difference? All of a sudden at 4-all, they didn't get a better shot. They didn't get faster, but they were mentally tough, and they were able to handle that pressure. I mean, everybody feels pressure, but it's who controls it. And time again, as I was playing with them a lot, they always came out on top. I'm like, I got to learn how to do that. And I started to pay attention to how I was feeling and the speed of play. And when I got excited, I sped up. And when I missed a couple of shots, I kind of slumped. I'm like, no, I'm not going to show that. I'm not going to feel that. And once I got the hang of that, I started to practice that mindset and that feeling. And I started to recognize those moments in myself. And then when Sue and I teamed up, she was on the same page. And that consistency, that awareness, I think, is what made us be successful.
It's really interesting because in all sports, you really find the difference is not a physical difference, it's a mental difference. And our game, more than any other, I think that is the case.
And now, look at all the players. I mean, Chicago was all the talent, all the athletic ability, all the racket skills, and it comes down to a few moments. And recognizing it and seeing it and being able to control and execute under those moments is what separates the champions.
Okay, so that's a great segue, because in the finals at Chicago, I saw belief from Roxy and Martina Andrikova that I hadn't seen previously.
Yes, they've been playing way too fast. The matches that I've seen them play, they played too fast and too big, and they picked their shots better, we saw in Chicago, and put pressure on Anna and Vicky that nobody else has been able to do, and you saw the change. And the more shots they hit, the more confident they became, the more confident, the more relaxed they came, and they really had a breakthrough tournament.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how the game has evolved. You've obviously been playing the game for a couple of years now.
Yeah, one or two, I think.
One or two. So where do you see the game today, where it was 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah.
The athletes, the technology, everything.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, the technology in our sport, just like every other racket sport or every other sport now, has come into our paddles. So there's much more power, there's more control. The holes are sharper, there's more grit, so you can put more spin on the ball. The ball itself, I mean, when we were playing with the Vittert ball, right, you would bounce it, it wouldn't come up past your knee. So now you bounce, the ball is livelier, which means you're attacking at a higher point.
Do you think that's good or bad for the tournament player?
I think it's great for the game. I think it's
certainly good for the club player.
Great for the game.
Play the wires.
Yeah, and the points go longer. So now it's where you could make those Vittert balls die in the screen easily, and drop shot a lot more.
What would you
tougher.
think of playing a tournament in the winter with the low bounce ball?
It'd be interesting. It would be definitely interesting. I mean, there wouldn't be as much offense because that ball just won't come up.
Right.
So now that the ball's up higher, there's more opportunities to attack. And the way the game also has changed, there's much more, the higher number of racket professionals entering our game. So as the clubs, especially in the Northeast, all are putting in platform tennis courts, instead of a lot of the pros going to Florida, they're staying here. So now they're teaching paddle. So now we have year-round racket players and a lot more of them. And it's also happened now in the women's game. Back, when I was really competing, there was maybe 2 or 3 of us that were teaching paddle full-time. I looked at the rankings the other day, and out of the top 10 teams, 16 out of the 20 females. 80%. Yeah, they're teaching tennis and paddle, so they have rackets in their hand 7 days a week. So therefore, their skill, the number of players playing the game is higher. The athletes are faster, and it's an exciting time now for women's paddle.
Yeah, I have to say Chicago was the most exciting women's match I've seen in a long time. The level of athleticism, racket skills, it was really fun to watch, and I hope the women's game continues to evolve in that direction.
Oh, for sure. I mean, look what happened last week in Connecticut. We had a breakthrough tournament with Liz Cruz and Marcela Hernandez. So they beat Bobo Antonio in the quarters, and then Liz Jaffe and Kerry Flynn. Yep, in the semis. Now, both those teams, many years of experience, and they came through, and then they lost to Dardis and Shea in 3 sets. So, again, new team coming through. Philadelphia's got, which is great to see, they've got a handful of new rackets players coming into the sport. I watched them at Indian Trail. Chicago has always got an area looking for Boston to step it up and get more rackets professionals into the game. And it's really an exciting time for women's paddle.
Well, our next big women's tournament, I guess, is the Long Island Invitational, the Dwayne Hayden Long Island Invitational.
Yes.
So that should be fun. I think everybody's playing there.
That'll be loaded, yep. And we'll see, a new combination, Kerry Delmonico, Lauren Gebbia, Sue Tarzian, Lauren Mandel, Kerry Flynn, last year's national finalist. I'm not sure who she's playing with, but there's a lot of teams that could do well
It's really been fun to see the new teams in the women's game this year.
Yeah.
The guys tend to do that. The women tend to stay married a lot longer than the guys do.
Well, again, the number of pros coming in, there's more choices. There's more good players that can win. So we're in for a really great season for women's paddle and, the men's paddle.
Okay. Well, Gerri, thank you very much for joining us on Screenshots, and we're looking forward to seeing you on the APTA live stream down the road.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
So on Sound Shore this weekend, one of the biggest tournaments of the year. Let's talk about some of the interesting matchups. In the 32s, you have the Crocker-Hume versus Seiler and Hughes match. What are your thoughts on that match?
I think that Crocker and Humes are a great team, and I think they're going to win the match against Seiler and Hughes. I think Hughes is a good player, but Crocker and Humes are very good.
Crocker and Hume are an interesting team. Tennis players, really hit the ball. I think they've suffered from lack of a lot of quality play. I think the guys in the Baltimore area tend to play together, and they're not getting out enough to see the top guys to really get accustomed to the speed of the game.
Yeah, I think that they don't play many tournaments. They only play local tournaments. If they play more, there would be a lot more good teams from that area.
Okay, next matchup in the 32s we want to talk about is Janacek, an Englander, versus Scott Falatek, who's playing with Guy Moore this week. How do you see that unfolding?
Well, I think the best player on that court is Scott Falatek.
Unquestionably.
And I think he can take over the court. They will win. Rob Janacek can play, and Danny Englander, he can sometimes play. So I think it's an interesting match. I will still give the edge to Scott and Guy in that match.
I agree. Okay, so let's jump to the 16s. Best 16 in the sheet to me is the Durant-Parsons Parr-Lepavere match.
I don't think it's the best 16.
I'm not sure it's going to be a competitive 16, but certainly an interesting one.
It's going to be an interesting one. I think the weakest link there is going to be Corey. And, Mark and Johan are good at finding the weak spots, and I think they're going to find Corey screens, which he's been struggling. I think that and I'm going to talk to Max later, actually, tomorrow we're playing a practice match. I think that they should look to switch sometimes. I don't know how much play has Corey have on the
virtually none.
Yeah, but sometimes it's good to give your opponents a different look if things are not working. We have to wait and see how the match is.
Maybe if they're going to do that, they should do it in the first round against Aman and I. It might be a mistake to do it against Johan.
Yeah, could be.
Could be. Okay, so next matchup we have in the 16s is Mark Innes and Mick Erdoya versus Anton Mavrin and Patricio Mistotrano.
Yes.
Mick and Mark had a tremendous tournament at Patterson, making the finals. not such a great result in Rochester. Mick pulled a hamstring, but I think he's healthy and ready to go. What are your thoughts on that match?
Well, I think I told you this before. I think Mick and Mark are good players, and they're getting better by the second. But I think they actually had a good run at the Patterson Open because it was warm, and they could play more like tennis, not so much paddle. I think that Anton and Patricio will win that match because they've been playing paddle for a longer time, and now it's starting to get cold. The ball doesn't bounce as high. And Mick, who is, I think, the strongest player on that team, will not be able to create that much offense that he was creating at Patterson. He was hitting unbelievable shots, but I think that he's not going to have the opportunity that he had in that event.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the weather impacts things. Saturday's supposed to be on the cooler side, low 40s. Sunday, when we get to the semis and finals, mid-50s.
I mean, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they will get to Sunday.
Okay, next 16 we want to talk about is yours. You're playing this tournament with Mike Cochran,
Yeah.
your partner from President's Cup last year.
Yes.
And you've got Scott Kaler and Mike Stulak potentially in the round of 16.
Yes. I think that's not because I'm playing, but I think that's the toughest 16. You have 4 players that have been playing for a while. I think that's going to be a tough match for either team.
Okay, I know you're loath to pick yourself, so I'll pick you.
Well, but still it's going to be a tough match. I don't think it's going to be easy. And if it happens to be easy, it's because one of us doesn't play well. I don't think it's going to be an easy match.
Well, you and Mike have a lot of offense. Mike is a tremendous returner from the deuce court.
But between of us, we only have one brain.
So you're attributing each of you having a half?
Probably.
Or do you have 3/4 and maybe
I don't
Mike's
know.
got a quarter?
I don't know.
I hate to break up the partnership this early. So jumping to the bottom half of the draw, we have a rematch from the 32-back draw in charities. Sebi and Martin, Sebastian Bredberg and Martin Bostrom playing against Graham McInerney up from Atlanta, go Dogs, and Guga Gonçalves. Now, those teams played on Sunday afternoon. It was actually the last match, still going. And I got to say, Martin didn't look too good after Saturday night. I think they had a long Saturday night. So my hope is that Martin will be more ready to play. What are your thoughts on that match?
I think, Martin was in the 32 back draw final not because he went out on Saturday night. It was more because he lost on Saturday morning, and because of that, he didn't have anything to lose, so he went out on Saturday night.
That's a pretty good analysis.
I think Martin didn't have a good tournament. We agreed on that when we did the recap on the charities.
No question.
I think if Martin can play at the level he can play, I will pick them. Sebastian is usually steady. He doesn't make many mistakes. But Graham is very impressive. And Guga...
Very talented.
If you have...
Guga might be the most up-and-down player on the tour.
Yes.
Guga's
I
highs
think
are
Guga
tremendous.
can be as good as anybody, but can be
And
as
bad as anybody. We've had some practice
he
sessions with
can
Guga,
be,
which were
yeah.
amazing.
Well, that same day we had a practice match. That was so funny. We had a practice match one day. You, Guga, Max, and I at Innis Arden.
Yep.
And he was faulting. He was playing horrible. And that same night, Guga and Marco...
Devin.
Guga and Devin beat Marco and George that they were coming from the final at Soundshore. How
Yeah, 1
crazy.
and 2 or
The same
something.
day.
Yeah, that's
Two
Guga.
different Gugas.
Okay, so last 16 we're going to talk about, assuming Falatek and Moore get through, they play Lubao de Rose.
I think Lubao de Rose will win that match. They know Guy Moore too well, and they know that his weaknesses, and I think that's going to be.
Okay, so let's jump to the quarters. Let's start bottom half of the draw, George and Marco versus Lubao de Rose.
I think that's going to be a good match. I'm looking forward to seeing that match. I think, I personally think it's 50-50. I cannot give one team an edge because if Marco and George play the same way they played against me and Max at
played
the
very
charities,
well
they play
in
great,
charities.
I will give them the edge. But they're not known for playing that well all the time. And nobody, can play the best all the time. But I think that Lubao de Rose, on the other hand, haven't been playing that well. So...
And that's a fast style, which probably favors Marco and George there.
Yes. But the Rose is, I think is probably the best player on
Okay,
the
so
court.
it's time to get off the fence. Who are you picking
Yes.
in the match?
If I have to pick somebody right now, I will pick George and Marco.
Me too. Okay, so the next quarter above them is Broderick and Jared Palmer playing against
against Sebi and Martin.
Against Sebi and Martin. So how do you see that unfolding? Do you give Sebi and Martin any chance in that match?
I don't think so. I think Drew is playing unbelievable. Drew is too good for them. And Jared is playing great too.
You know, it's interesting. Jared and Drew obviously had a tremendous run, winning the first 2 tournaments of the year without dropping a set. Patterson, they lose 8 games, which is astonishing. Drew's on top of his game, goes to charities, plays with Gambino, great run through the tournament, and then gets crushed in the finals by Durant Parsons.
Yeah, but also you have to notice that even though Drew played with Palmer at Patterson and Atlantic, Johan Durant and Mark Parsons weren't playing those 2 events. So, like I said in the previous show, I would love to see Broderick and Palmer play against Durant and Parsons, and this weekend can happen. I'm going to try to
prevent it.
Prevent it.
Okay, so top half of the draw, assuming Durant Parsons get through, which we all assume, they'll probably be playing against, as we picked so far, Anton and Patricio. Anton Mavrin, Patricio Misatrano. Do you give Anton and Patricio any chance at all in that match?
I mean, it's hard to pick them.
It's hard to pick anybody against Durant Parsons.
It's hard to pick them. I agree. But also, I think that Anton has a firepower. Sometimes Patricio gets a little too passive, and he can get to a lot of shots because he's super fast. But he doesn't have good volleys. I don't think he has good volleys, and I think they're gonna struggle. I mean, to beat Durant and Parsons, you have to volley well.
Yeah, I think last year at Sound Sure they played him 1 competitive set. I think they lost like 1 in 5 or something like that, but I'm not sure. Okay, so the final quarter we've got is your quarter.
Yeah.
You and Mike Cochran, the team with one brain, although we still haven't attributed where the one brain is coming from.
His
Versus Nathan Lefevre and Anthony Casamano. Guys you got a lot of experience with, guys you're playing a practice match with tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm actually playing with Max against Cosi and Nathan. I'm going to play lefty so I don't show my strengths or weaknesses.
That was your partner's suggestion, the
yeah,
man with
that was.
A quarter of the brain on the team.
Yes.
So, we want to talk about the matchups there, or you don't want to talk about it? You want me to talk about it?
No, I mean, we can talk. Look, I like those 2 guys. They're great guys, and they're good players. They're a great team. That's what they were seed 3 or 4 in this event. And
4th, I think.
I think, I played against them as a team once at President's Cup, I think. I know, and I played them in the semis.
Well, you and Mike played them last year at President's Cup.
Yes, and then I played
Pittsburgh.
them also with Leonard in the semis of Atlantic last year. I like playing against those 2 guys. They're very competitive. They're good players. I think, look, you always say that I never pick myself, but I think we can beat them. I mean, I like to play against those guys. I like
you
the
and
style.
Mike can beat anybody.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think
including
we
yourselves.
can beat them. But they can give us a hard, headache and a hard time, and it could be a good match. I think it's going to be a great match, and I would, if I had to recommend a match to come watch, or watch it online on the live stream, which is going to be hopefully live stream, is that match. It's a good foursome.
I'll take that
Fun
under
battle.
advisement when I'm talking to Jim McCready about which match to stream.
I think it's going to be a good match.
Okay, I'm picking you guys in that match with all deference to Anthony and Nathan. So, which brings us to the semis. Let's start in the bottom half of the draw in the semis. I think we both liked Marco and George ultimately to face Broderick and Palmer.
Yeah.
To give them any chance against
No.
Broderick and Palmer. None whatsoever.
No, I don't think George has the patience to beat Drew.
Now, George beat Drew last year in Atlantic.
Yeah, with Gambino 6-4, 6-4, but he wasn't. It's not the same team.
George was awfully patient in Chicago. George played terrifically in charities against you in the 16s.
Yeah, and then I played him in the league match on the Premier League on Sunday, and he was back to normal.
Okay. Again, George won't be able to understand any of this, so we don't have to worry about it.
I love George.
So, top half of the draw, you guys getting through against Durant Parsons.
But wait, sorry, let me go back to that match. I don't think it's just George why they're not. I mean, I think that Jared and Drew are a great team, and I think they're better today. They're a better team than George and Marco. It's not they're going to lose that match because George cannot win. Because we always say this. You cannot win by yourself, so it takes two to win and one to lose.
Chuck Poe, that's Chuck Poe's old line.
Okay, so it's actually a great line, but I think that Drew and Jared are a better team overall.
Okay, top half of the draw.
Oh my
Assuming
God.
you guys get through. Obviously, Mike
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise. Well, you've been in a lot of semis, so it's not unfair to suggest you're going to get there. So Mike Cochran's obviously had maybe the best success of anybody against Durant Parsons, a win over him, and then a very tough quarterfinal last year's Nationals. Mike obviously is playing the forehand here, not the backhand. Tell me what you think about that matchup.
You know, look, I love playing with Alex. I love playing with Leonard. I love playing with Max.
You love playing with everybody. You love playing with me.
I don't know. I don't know if I would love to play with Mike. Now, the truth is, Mike is a great player. The only thing I think it will benefit this team if we play Durant and Parsons in the semis is that Mike like to hit his two-hander forehand or that backhand or whatever that is, that he hits two hands on both sides. That shot, yeah. And if they do the I formation, the permanent I that they always do when they play me, that they like to hit the wire to the other side, they like to play the deuce court player a lot more. I think that Mike can stop them from doing that because Mike will have the shot on the side.
He did in Pittsburgh. In Pittsburgh, they started that, they switched.
So now they will probably have to move the ball around a little more. That will stop them from doing that permanent eye. It will give less freedom to Johan to take the net, so they will have to play more classic paddle. I like the matchup. Unfortunately, and once again, I did it in charities, and I'm not trained to be
you can't pick somebody
Cinderella
other than Durant Parsons.
You know, a Cinderella story. Oh, Juan and Mike beat them. If we happen to beat them, we must play amazing. But I have to pick them. You know, they haven't lost. They have lost only one match in 2 seasons.
So let's talk about something that's going to be part of our analysis of the finals too. One of the things that it strikes me that Johan has been able to do is been able to enlarge the court for the backcourt team. So when he's at the net, he's got a variety of overheads, the hard overhead, the drop shot, and the spinny overhead that seem to encompass the whole court, mid-court, backcourt, and the net. So in order to beat them, you have to really have a deuce court player that can move. Can Mike do that?
Well, Mike can move, yeah. I mean, Mike gets to a lot of shots. I mean, when I play against him, I have a hard time hitting behind him, and he moves well. He gets to a lot of balls. I think he moves well enough to
Okay, so let me ask that question again. Now we're moving on to the finals, assuming those guys get through, because we all agree that you got to pick Durant Parsons.
Yes.
First matchup of the year between Durant Parsons and Broderick Palmer, which everybody wants to see. Everybody except you, obviously.
No, I want to watch that match. Hopefully, they lose in the quarters.
Maybe
so
the quarterback draw.
Quarterback draw final.
That would be an intense final, the quarterback draw. So, Jared Palmer obviously is a completely different type of player than Chris Gambino. He doesn't present the offense. His forehand's not as heavy as Chris's. Volley's much better than Chris, although with all deference to Chris, Jared may volley better than everybody. And he also moves better than Chris. Can they give him problems in the finals?
They can.
How?
They have more offense. They volley better. Like I said.
Do they have more offense? I'm not sure. I mean, to me, Chris's forehand is heavier. Jared will hit that one-hander once in a while, the backhand.
Yeah, and that's going to keep him honest. But he also, like we said, and we always agree on this, not on camera, but behind camera too, that you have to volley well against.
Exceptionally well to beat them.
And they have that. They can. I will still pick.
Yeah, my big question with those guys is Drew has been, listen, Drew's the most disciplined player in the game by far. His shot selection's amazing. He's dominated everybody not named Durant Parsons. Although you guys had good success with him a couple years ago, you and Leonard. But the question is, can they get to the net enough? Can they hurt them from the backcourt to take over the net to beat them? Because we both agree that you can't beat Durant Parsons from the backcourt. You have to be at the net. And in the finals of charities, Broderick Gambino were in the backcourt 85-90% of the time and willing to be in the backcourt. So how are they going to get to the net to beat them?
Well, Jared volleys better.
But you still got to hurt them to get to the net. Doesn't matter how well you volley if you're not there.
Jared can drive the ball. If he comes willing to swing, he will.
I think Drew is one of the top 2 or 3 players in the game. I think he's got to play more aggressively and be willing to hit the ball more and make some mistakes from the backcourt in order to beat those guys. I don't think he can play that super patient style because if you play patiently from the backcourt, Johan is going to hurt you, and Johan's going to beat you from the net.
Could be.
Okay, we will see. Hopefully Juan and I will be back early next week, depending on Juan's vacation schedule.
No, I'm not going on vacation. I'm going to help Leonard at Jones Island. I'm going to teach tennis for a week during Thanksgiving week, so I'm looking forward to that, actually.
Okay, so based on Roxana's vacation schedule, hopefully we'll be back early next week with a recap of Sound Shore.
Yep.
Until then,
see you later.
See you later.